Hey, what is going on, guys, and welcome back to the full-time travel planning course. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about budgets, planning, how much money you need to travel, everything you want to know about how you can build your financial timeline to bridge you from today, where you're currently sitting, to being on the road as a full-time traveler. And so guys, let's first lay out how this video is looking. The first topic we're gonna cover is what is your travel style? Then we're gonna move on to talking about putting together just somewhat of a very rough itinerary. And when I mean rough, I mean like, what am I doing each month? And then we're gonna talk about the three different classifications of budget: low, medium, and high cost of living countries. And once we define what types of countries you're going to, where your budgets fit into on the low, medium, or high, then we're gonna actually create a budget. And I'm gonna share with you what my full-time traveling budget was for the year. Then we're going to talk about how you can put together all the costs from your low, medium, and high, any additional costs like travel, vaccinations, things like that. And then we're going to move on to getting your final number of what it's going to cost you to travel the world. After we finalize what your budget is for full-time traveling, we're actually going to create a budget for you that is specific to what are your current living expenses, what are your lifestyle costs. For a lot of you, especially from the United States, you'll find that traveling the world is probably cheaper than living at home. And trust me, for me, coming from Washington, D.C., one of the most expensive cities, traveling the world is a fraction of what it used to cost me to live in one spot and pay rent in a very expensive city. So after we put together your current expenses budget, we'll have a pretty good idea of where you stand in terms of how much you can save every single month. And so what we'll do is we'll figure out how much money do you have saved now, how much money can you save each month, and what is your target amount of money you need to save up in order to travel the world full time. And when we put all that together, we're gonna have a timeline for you. So by the end of this video, I think you'll feel quite confident if you use the tools provided, take some of the advice, think about it, sleep on it, and you'll be quite confident that you can come up with the budget you need to travel the world full time. So let's go ahead and jump in here to the first topic, your travel style. And I'm gonna break this down into three different parts of what your travel style means. The first one is, how do you like to travel? Do you like to travel luxuriously, where you're staying at 5-star or 4.5-star, like Bora Bora style resorts? Do you like to travel at more of a modest level, where you're staying in nicer Airbnbs and moderate hotels? 3, do you like to go ahead and stay at more budget-friendly places like hostels and places like that, which are going to give you a much lower cost per night to stay at? Or 4, are you an ultra low-cost traveler, where you're doing things like hitchhiking and you're doing things like couch surfing, ways that you can really bring down your overall costs from traveling the world? So give that some thought, jot that down, start thinking about what your style of travel is, because that's going to affect your budget. So number 2, start thinking about what is your preference for speed of travel. And what I mean by this was a learning that I actually had when I first started traveling. I wanted to go everywhere, I wanted to see everything, I wanted to record everything, and I wanted to do it all in a year, which was my initial plan for traveling the world. And so with that, I created these insanely fast itineraries to go from one place to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. And I will tell you, within 4 weeks of starting my full year of travel, I was almost burnt out, because think about it. If you're traveling really fast, then I'll tell you how I was traveling. I would stay in a place for 4 days. So the day I arrived was a travel day. The day I left was a travel day. Think about that. Sandwiched in between that time, I had to explore a whole city. And that got so frustrating. I didn't get to see the places, and I didn't have unique experiences. But that being said, I don't want to say there isn't a place for quick travel. For me, in higher cost of living places, that's where I prioritize now my preference on how quickly I stay in a place. Like if I go to a city like London, which I find to be extremely expensive, and most of the world probably does too, I am the one who's going to want to do maybe only 2 or 3 days there and then fly somewhere a little bit cheaper, like Sevilla, Spain, for example. And there I can live a much more comfortable life and spend a very small fraction of what I would have spent in London. Just one more thing about my experience was, after a couple months of traveling, I found my sweet spot, which was staying in a place around 7 to 10 days. And 7 to 10 days would give me the time to arrive there, get settled in, maybe not even do anything the first day. Then I would have a few days where I can just go and explore, move at my own pace, go out for a couple drinks if I meet people, whatever it was. And then I could also have a couple days which were just fully focused to work days, which is, you know, these YouTube videos and the other content that I create. And so I wanted to not have that pressure in the back of my mind where I either need to work till 3 in the morning or I just simply won't be able to fully enjoy the places I go to. So that's where my current travel taste buds have matured to, if you will. So give it some thought, write it down, and once again, we'll talk a little bit more about this later on when it gets to the budget. The next thing is, where are you thinking about going geographically? And this is going to tie on to the next point we talk about after, and that is in terms of cost of living of different places around the world. So if you're going to places like Southeast Asia and South America, that's what I would define as relatively low cost of living. Now, of course, you're going to find places everywhere in the world which are cheap, but then if you go to certain places within that destination, they're going to be very expensive. So my next place would be moderately expensive countries, which are places like Spain and Portugal. And so for me, they're still quite cheap, but they're not as cheap as Southeast Asia, for example. And then of course, high cost of living countries, you're gonna have Australia, New Zealand, United Kingdom, United States, Sweden, Norway. All these really high cost of living countries are going to require a pretty penny. That said, now I think you have a pretty good understanding of what your travel style is. Are you going to be going to cheap places, and are you going to be staying in luxurious places? Or are you going to be traveling from place to place to place in really expensive places? Start to think about that. It's a lot of blah, 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 but there's a reason behind this. It's going to help you figure out how much money you're actually going to spend. So the next thing I want you guys to do is put together a rough itinerary of where you're going, just month by month, strictly. So for me, my first month was I was gonna go to Portugal, Spain, and I think Germany when I first started out. And so basically that gave me an idea. All right, month one, I'm gonna be at relatively moderately expensive countries. So do that for however many months you're going to travel, and that'll give you a rough itinerary of where you're going. Now, if you're not sure and you wanna go with the flow, that's okay. Just use something that you're guessing where you're going to be. This is a budget, this is a cost plan. There's no possible way to get it exact. You don't know where you're gonna end up or what's gonna happen in different destinations or how your life's going to evolve. So you can really only come up with a plan that makes sense as of today. So now that you put together your rough itinerary, go ahead and take a look at each one of the months that you're traveling and just assign it low, medium, or high cost of living countries that you're visiting. And we'll talk about why we're doing this in just a moment here. So now we're gonna go to what some would consider their favorite part, which is figuring out how much it's going to cost you to travel the world. Hold on to those thoughts of low, medium, and high. What we're going to do is we're gonna make a budget for you on what it costs to travel the world. And in order to do this, we need to make 3 separate budgets. One that matches your low, one that matches your medium, and one that matches your high cost of living countries, which will then be able to give you your total cost plan. So if you go ahead and look in the description below, I've actually included a template that I used in order to create my full-time travel cost planning before I traveled. A really helpful document. I have it made for you, ready to go. You can just start infilling all of your numbers for your expenses, what you imagine it's going to be, and you'll have your budget quite easy. So once you go ahead and download that, take a look at what's in there. You're gonna find everything I could think of that's more of like your day-to-day expenses you'll incur, whether it is your flights, whether it is your accommodations, groceries, going out for food, going out for drinks. You know, you can see the whole list there. We have basically everything mapped out in there for you. One thing I will mention is that my costs are not going to be the same as yours, once again, because I have a different travel style probably. Number 2, I might like to go out and drink a little bit more, or I might like to stay in a little bit more, you know? It depends on what your preference is. I can't give you your numbers, but what I can tell you is that we will at least help you create the budget that is as close as possible to your spending habits. So what I would recommend you to do is try and figure out what your daily costs are for some of these items already. And the reason why I say that is because you can use calculators online that give you an estimate of what it costs in other countries to do those day-to-day things, whether it's grocery shopping or whether it's going out to eat or just something along those lines of costs that we're tracking, we're building into our budget plan here. So if you go ahead and put that together, input that into your budget calculator, you'll be able to then figure out your low, medium, and high. One thing I'll mention is when you downloaded that spreadsheet, you probably saw that my budget is almost $31,000 for the year. If you're just going to Southeast Asia for the next 12 months, you're going to have a fraction of that, well, depending on your travel style, I can't say for sure, but in general, you're probably gonna have a fraction of what that budget is. Why? Because I'm going to places all around the world, Australia, New Zealand, traveling around Europe very quickly, going to places like Oktoberfest. I went to Iceland, South America, then I was planning on going to Southeast Asia. So as you can see, I'm all over the map, no pun intended, in terms of where I'm going, what types of countries that I'm going to be traveling to. And I'm also traveling a lot from country to country, which brings those transportation costs way up. So I think it's important to show you that that's what I think it's going to cost me. Now I will say, after traveling the last 6 months and identifying this is what I thought I was going to spend and this is what I did spend, it seems like it's going to actually be much less, because now I'm pretty much only going to be traveling to countries in Southeast Asia where my budget is much lower. So if I had to guess, I would probably think that I'm going to spend somewhere around $25,000 for 1 year of travel. And as a side note though, if you're a little concerned about your budget, what I would do is add a 10 to 15% buffer on it. So if you have a total budget of $20,000, times that by 1.1 or times that by 1.15. And that will give you a 10 to 15% buffer, so additional money you should save. That way if something comes up, or if you want to go on that awesome boat cruise that's going to cost a little bit more money, you have that money budgeted. You won't feel guilty if you spend a little bit too much. So I recommend putting in a buffer if you're not as comfortable, if you're not sure about the budgets. That's another option, just to make yourself feel a little bit more comfortable when you create your financial plans. So hopefully you've downloaded those budgets now and you've had a chance to go ahead and take a look at them, understand them, digest them. If you have any questions, comment below. I would be more than happy to help you with whatever you need, and I'll respond to you as quickly as I can. If you want to get a hold of me via email and you have a longer question, feel free to reach out to me at worldnomac@gmail.com. I would be happy to help you with whatever question you might have. So now the second half of this video is we're going to try and figure out what you're spending every month in your current home, in your current place you're living at. What are all your expenses? Very similar to the expenses you're planning for full-time travel. However, the only difference is we're going to be trying to figure out what you're spending now, because you'll be able to tell very quickly that, hey, I like to go out, or you might even know this, I like to go out and have dinner a lot. So my budget for going out to dinner is much higher. Or maybe you like to cook food more often, so your grocery bill is higher, but you don't really have much of a going out cost. Whatever it is, it's personalized to you, of course. But I want to share with you my budgeting spreadsheet, which will be able to be a template for you, and it covers most of the different categories that I think you'll have in your life as well. So go ahead and download this spreadsheet as well. And what I would recommend to do is look back at your last couple bank statements and credit card statements and however you've spent money, and then go ahead and start filling that in to figure out what your actual costs are per month. And then with that, you'll probably may or may not be a bit surprised to know, hey, wow, I'm spending this much here. I don't want to do that anymore. So first step is it's going to give you an idea of maybe where you should start cutting some costs if you want to save more money. Or number two, it's just going to give you a better idea of how much money do you have left over at the end of the month. If your expenses are $800 and you're making $1,000 per month, you have $200 left over. So the reason why I just made that simple example was we're trying to figure out in this budget, how much money do you have left over every single month to be able to put towards your savings plan to travel the world. Now, one thing I want to recommend is you should pay off any sort of debts that you have. That was my biggest thing, which did make it really hard because I knew that I was going to be stretching my timeline out so much as I didn't want to, because I wanted to full-time travel basically the day after I started planning. But in reality, I had, I don't know, somewhere around 14 to 18 months I think it ended up taking me to get where I needed to be. But I'll tell you my strategy personally, and I'm not your financial advisor and I can't give you exact advice for your life, but for me, I wanted to make sure that I had my money and my plans set up in a way where if I do travel for a year, I don't come back and have $0 to my name. I had my 401k, which was, my money for my retirement, is at least what we call it here in the United States, which is, money you don't even touch. So I had that money planned. I wanted to keep saving in that account. Then I had stocks that I wanted to save, so that way I can at least have some money basically working for itself and have some money stockpiled there. And then I had my budget just under $31,000, which was just my play money, just my travel money, just my living expenses money for traveling the world. And so the reason why I'm explaining it to you in these basically three separate categories is 401k and investments are pushed to the side. While I'm traveling the world, those are just in the dark somewhere. This is the money I'm working with. In my budgeting plan, I had my breakdown of what am I saving each month for these different areas and how can I reach my goals. One of my goals personally was to pay off my student loans. I had $65,000 when I graduated college as student debt. Yeah, 65,000 USD plus interest to pay that off. But to be honest, I made a plan early on how I can pay that off, and I worked really, really hard, a little bit harder than I probably should have, put in maybe a few too many hours, but I knew if I worked hard, I would then be able to go ahead and make more money and be able to pay off this student debt quicker. The reason why I'm telling you my experiences, because I don't want you to feel like you're alone if you have debt, whether it's credit cards, student loans, anything you have that's over your head. We've all been there. When I was in college, I got a bit carried away a couple times with my credit card, and I ultimately had to pay it off. Be okay to face it. You know, some of you might have a lot, some of you might not have any at all, and you want to skip over this part. But for those of you that do, I just want you to feel okay about it and face it and just make a plan though. But if you do make it a point that you really want to make this a goal by the end of however much time to pay this off, you're going to be happy you did. And I will tell you, the second you step foot on soil, traveling the world, you are going to feel that much more relieved. You won't have that imaginary weight on your shoulders that's saying, hey, wow, you have this to pay off. Should you really be doing this right now, right? So go ahead and fill in that budget, figure out what your costs are. If you don't know your costs or you only spend your money in cash, and figure out how you're spending your money. Keep track of it, whether it's in an e-notepad or you want to journal it. What do you spend every single day? And then put that into the chart. Now, if you have an off month this month or next month, do it for a couple months. If you're going to still have quite a ways away until you begin traveling, just try and figure out what you're spending, what you have available to save, what you have available to pay off any debts you have, and then you can build that into your timeline. Hopefully you're going to come to some specific amount after you create that you're able to put towards saving for full-time travel. That amount is going to be some fraction of your total budget that you came up with earlier in the first budgeting exercise, which is what is the total amount that I need to travel the world for a year or whatever time it is that you want to travel. So let's say it was $20,000. You have $20,000 as your target savings amount. Each month, you're able to save $300. So $300 each month, you're going to get closer to there. So you're able to figure out that after however many months of saving $300, you're going to be able to travel the world full time. And so some of you are probably like, oh my gosh, how am I ever going to get there? That's going to take me forever. Don't worry, guys. The most important thing to figure out is, what will it cost you to travel the world? How much can you save now? If the answer is zero, there's a few things you can do. Figure out where you can go ahead and start cutting some of your costs, and then figure out how you can make some extra money. Now, not in this video, but in a later video in the series, we're gonna talk about 10 extra ways where you can make a side income. So if you have a current job you're doing, how can you use some of your free time to make a little bit of extra money to help you to make more money to get you to your goal, which is traveling the world full time. And so guys, that pretty much wraps up this video. I really hope that's been very beneficial for you. I want you to really go ahead and take these budgets, look at them again, and look at them again after that to make sure you've perfected them to as best as possible. And the reason why I say that is because, well, you can't have an exact number or an exactly accurate figure. The closer you get to it, the more comfortable that you're going to feel. All right, guys, and one last thing I want to add in for you is, if you did not already check out the full-time traveling course guide, or you didn't see the first episode, I have created this whole video series completely for free for you guys. So you can, of course, watch 100% of this series and figure out everything you need to do to travel the world. And if you take a bunch of notes and everything, you will have a very, very successful plan. Now, for those of you that want to take it to the next step and really want an actionable plan, every single episode is broken down with steps that you need to do to get you to your goal. I want you to go ahead and check out in the link below my full-time travel planning guide. This guide is going to have everything you need to know, the only travel planner you'll ever need in order to figure out what you need to do. So trust me when I tell you, this thing is gold. It will give you everything. There's nothing that I've seen out there on the market like this, and you're gonna be happy when you grabbed it. If there's any reason you don't like it, we're offering a 30-day money-back guarantee. So once again, check it out. We do also have the first course, episode 1, free for you to go ahead and download and check out. Now, that is more of an intro episode, so obviously that's not gonna cover as much detail as, let's say, episode 2 right here, where we break down everything you need to do for the budgeting plan. Super, super helpful stuff, guys. I definitely recommend you to check it out. And so guys, that pretty much wraps up this video. So in episode 3, I'm really excited to share with you a bit more about life milestones and how to build that in. In this video, of course, we were focused more on your financial timeline. Now in the next video, we're gonna talk about what are some of those other things you wanna build into there. Do you have a lease? Do you have a house you need to sell? Do you have a plan to get married? Do you have a plan to have kids? Whatever it might be, how do you wanna build some of these life milestones into your timeline? So then after the next episode, I think you'll feel quite confident to really have a timeline that you can trust, you can believe in, and you can start waking up every day and counting down the days until your full-time travel. All right, guys, I'm super excited you've made it through episode 2. Really looking forward to sharing with you the rest of what this course has to offer. So if you like this video, guys, give it a thumbs up. It'll help other viewers like you find this video when they're searching for video results on the web. And thanks so much for watching, guys. If you don't want to miss any future videos coming out, hit that subscribe button and hit that bell button too, and it'll give you a notification whenever we release more content like this. So guys, looking forward to seeing you in the next video.